Hello, my name is Ade and welcome to a tutorial for RPG All-in-One. In this video we'll be covering the different types of stats that we have within the product. So stats are central to how RPGAIO works. They are used across the board with almost every feature being able to make use of them. We have four types of stats. We have attributes, statistics, vitals, as well as traits. You'll find however that you have full control over how and where you use these stats. So something I might recommend as a statistic might actually be used as an attribute and vice versa. So we have a couple of options here for the stats menu. So first we have the options. So the first one we have is a regen interval. So this is how often any sort of regeneration will occur. So if we quickly look at vital, we'll see that we have a base regeneration percent. So this means that every 0.9 seconds will regenerate 1% of our health. So that's what that option there means. We then have different titles for our different stat names, which is used in the UI. And we also have some options here for how high the player jumps, what the base player movement speed is, and what the base NPC or AI movement speed is. And we can also use a stat as a movement multiplier. So for example, we have movement. So the move speed will be the base movement speed, in this case 5, multiplied by the stat. So if we quickly look at our movement stat, we see it has a default value of 1. However, if the player reached like a movement statistic value of 2, then of course it'd be running at double the base speed, which would be 10 rather than 5. So let's go over the different types of stats. So the first one is attributes. So these are the main stats that basically define your character. They won't scale based on anything, but you'll be able to get them from skills, talents, status effects, and items. So we already have 5 example attributes here defined: strength, dexterity, intelligence, vitality, and luck. And these are just like your examples of what an attribute is. They're very abstract kind of just concepts, you know, strength, dexterity, intelligence. It's not saying like how much magical damage you can do, but you know that it will influence how much magical damage you will do. So the next one we have is the vitals. So these are used to define things which have a current value and a max value. So they're used for obviously health, mana. Another example is rage, and they can also be used for things like energy, combo meters, just things like that. Anything that's going to have a minimum current value and a max value. So for example, rage can go from 0 to 100, and at 0 rage maybe you can't cast a certain skill, maybe at 100 rage you can. Next one is statistics. So these are important stats to further define what your character can do. They can scale based on other values. So for example, attack speed might scale based on your strength. And you can also, similarly to attributes, get buffs or debuffs to these values based on skills and other sources. So included here are a couple of examples: critical chance, cast speed, fire resistance. You'd also have things such as critical hit damage, and you can use that in your combat damage calculations to maybe do more damage if they have a high critical hit damage value and stuff like that. The next one is traits. So here's a couple of examples. You have harvesting, monster hunter, and sword mastery. These are basically stats that gain experience and can level up. So it will start at level 1 and it can get up to like level 20 or level 100 based on what you define it to level up to. And they can be used elsewhere. So for example, harvesting might allow you to harvest tougher materials. Monster hunter might give you an advantage against stronger AI, and sword mastery might allow you to do more damage if you're wielding a sword. And obviously you can define a few stats here. So let's go back to attributes and cover the different fields you can fill out. So we'll make a new one here, and we're going to call this one, let's say, endurance. And so we want to give it a default value. So this is what it will start off as. So we'll say maybe 5. You can give it a color, maybe orange. Say whether it has a max value or not. So maybe you don't want the player to have like the chance to get over 1,000 endurance. Maybe you want to limit it to like 50. So you can set that here, and you can maybe put an image for it as well if you want. Vitals. So we'll make a new one here. We'll call this one maybe energy. So here if we set the default value to say 100, when the player first starts off with this vital, if they don't have any items that give them additional energy, they'll have 100 energy out of 100. And we can set the color here to yellow. Is the vital a health vital? In this case it's no, the only health vital is going to be health here. And we can give it a max value. So this is now talking about when you have items that give you additional energy. So say you have two items which both give you 1000 energy, then you should have 2100 energy. However, you can cap the energy amount to a certain value. So you might want to cap this and say you can only have 150 energy. And then we can add a base regeneration percentage. So for this, an energy stat, maybe we want to have it regen about 20% every second. So it'll only take 5 seconds to go from 0 energy to max energy. So the next thing we want to cover is statistics. So let's create a new one. Again, I will call this one critical hit chance, hit damage, sorry. And bonus value, the default value, sorry, will be 0. And obviously we could take this value of critical hit damage and add that onto our critical hit multiplier. So say if our critical hits normally do 2 times and we have a value of 0.5 for our critical hit damage, we can do 2.5 times the damage. And obviously you'll set that up in the combat damage calculations. Can give it a color again. We can say whether this is a percentage in the UI. So critical hit damage will be like 0.5 or be 0.7 or 0.75, etc. But you wouldn't want it to show 0.75, you want it to show 75%. So that's what this value does. So we want to tick that. And what kind of statistic is it? Offensive, defensive, or utility? And obviously it's an offensive one. So next one is traits. But before we actually create a trait, we want to cover how experience is handled. So obviously we have the player who levels up. We also now realize we have the traits that level up. And we also realize that we can get experience from defeating the monsters in the game, the AI. So we have a player experience definition. So this is defining how the player will level up. So we can give the player a max level. So maybe we want the player to have a max level of 100. The first level requiring maybe 100 experience, as it says here. Maybe for a level 100, you need 1 million experience. We can then look at the experience to level, and it just gives us a preview of how much experience they'll need between each level. But we can also change the way these work. So we can change it from logarithmic to linearize. And that means every level requires 100 more experience than the last. Or we can change it to linear, which means every level requires the same amount. And of course, that means these values change slightly. So as you see, the constant value here, we can change it from 100 experience per level, 100 additional experience per level, to maybe 1000. And of course, that would mean our level 100 experience will be different. So obviously you have a few options there. And you can do the same thing for our traits. So we have a basic default trait experience definition and a default monster experience definition. So here we might say that level 1 enemies give you 5 experience, and a level 100 enemy would give you, let's say, 5000 experience. And now we can use this with our enemies, which I'll show real quick. So for example, gains on kill here, we have experience, skill points, and trait experience. But instead of setting the experience value manually, we can gain it with the experience definition, and there we go. We set to our default one. But we can actually create our own ones. So if we add a new one, we can create one for, let's say, super monsters. And instead of our default, which gives 5 experience for a level 1, we can instead give 50 experience for a level 1. And say our max levels give us 10,000. And now we can go back to this enemy definition here, sorry. And instead of using the default, one more thing we need to do. We also need to set where this experience is being used, and it's experience gained. So gained from a monster. So we can go to this demon, and rather than use the default one, we can use the super monster one. And so we also want to make one for our traits, if we wanted to do that. So we're going to make one for the trait we're going to create, and we're going to call that trait gathering. So we're going to call this gathering XP, and this is used for trait leveling. And we're going to say gathering only goes to level 5, and you need a lot of experience. 10,000 for the first level and 100,000 for the max. And then we can have a look at how that would work here. Now if we go back to the trait, we can make a new one. So we call this gathering. So this, come up with a description. So stuff like that. Maybe something more creative than that sentence, but yeah. And then we can select our gathering experience definition here. And we'll say it starts at level 1. And give it a color, maybe green, and an image if you wanted to. And now we can use all of these stats we've created across RPG All-in-One. Use it in combat calculations, you can use it in quests, you can use it in items, and that's as simple as it is. So for example, we can make a apparel item, and you'll see now in attribute buffs we have all of our new stats in the statistics as well, vitals, etc. And so we can give increases to those. And yeah, that's it. So if you'd like more information on RPG All-in-One, check out the tutorials and other videos in the playlist linked below, and have a wonderful day.